Welcome everyone to our Elite Club call. What I have for you today is some of the questions that get asked frequently, but also that bring about really good dialogue. We're not going to be able to go through all of this on one call, but it's something I want to work with you guys now that we're back to work, back to school. This has been a big topic. Do I need to have a business checking account before applying for credit? More and more people are starting to agree with my school of thought, which is you really should have that checking account before you apply. I know it's easier to go online and you could do certain applications with like Chase, Amex, Bank of America, where you can just apply online for a business credit card. But ultimately, if you're looking to get a business line of credit and you have like practically no choice at this point, you're going to have to build a relationship with the bank. Everything I've been sharing with you the last 15 years or whatever, it's starting to really become the popular view on how to approach this. Obviously, you guys heard it here first, right? So yes, you should open a business checking account. It makes a big difference because if you are a client at a bank, you're going to be treated much differently than if you're not a client. This is super helpful when you're trying to get funding from these backyard banks that we work with, which, as I would say, the more and more as time goes on, I think the louder the message is going to be that credit stacking can only get you so far. There's only a small handful of banks that allow online applications. If you really want to get into getting funding from 10, 20, 30, 40 banks or even more, you're going to have to learn this process, right? So when we look at these banks that are in our top lenders list and you start talking about some of the banks beyond the online banks like Capital on Tap or Amex, but moving into M&T, PNC, Citizens, First Citizens, Valley, and almost any credit union, Truist, even Wells Fargo and TD Bank. Definitely helpful to open the business checking account first and just make a couple of deposits. It does not have to be $10,000 deposits. It could still be $100 and a week later another few $100. It's okay if you put in the minimum. The biggest change you're trying to make is go from a non-customer to a customer when you apply. If you do have good cash flow that you can move, then yeah, it will help influence their decision, but it's not as big of a move as simply having the account versus some guy off the street who applies online with no account. A lot of those online applications are just getting ignored anyways when you're working with backyard banks. You open the business checking account first, put in a few $100 in there, create rapport with the bank. It does two things. One, you have an advocate at the bank to help you get approved, which is really the real process. It's really all about relationships. And if you're not building those relationships, it is harder and harder to get the approvals. The second thing that it does is that if you have an advocate of the bank, you have someone you could talk to, and this is a bullet point on our notes today also, if you get denied. Sometimes the denial is just something silly and they just need an extra piece of paper and then they can push it through. Sometimes, many times, you get the denial letter in the mail and it has nothing to do with your individual situation. So you have to actually have a point of contact at the bank that you can talk to that can tell you, hey, Chris, this is the real reason why you got denied. And in some cases, you can fix that if you can do it in a pretty quick period, like within 30 days, and then send the updated credit report, which they could do a poll also, but your evidence can be submitted to the bank that you've made this adjustment and get reconsidered and get approved. Denials are part of the process. I always say that if you get denied or get approved, you're either going to get money or you're going to get a lesson, right? So if you do get denied, now you can look at reasons as to why you got denied so you can fix that and then readdress it. SCCU is a credit union. They offer business credit products, business lines of credit, business credit cards. Mike became a member of the credit union, but then they wouldn't let him get a business checking account, even with a foreign entity filing. I kind of reframed the way he's approaching them to see if I can get him in. He's trying that now. For everyone else on the call, still look at SCCU as an option for personal and business lending and just put it on your list as one of the banks that you want to follow up with. Mike, you just joined us and I was talking about you. Did you have any updates on this credit union?
No, I haven't had the opportunity to call them back yet again. I was going to do that today and I haven't got to it quite yet. So my call with them a couple of days ago said that for business accounts and business funding, they'll only deal with you if you are within Maryland or adjoining states.
Okay. And the challenge that we had was that they wanted you to be formed in that state and they wouldn't take a foreign entity filing.
That's
So,
correct. Yeah. I can see Travis has put a note. Oh, he's just put another note. Business is for adjacent states. And then he's just said not correct.
yeah,
Which part's not correct, Travis?
the foreign entity filing is probably not correct because that would be wild.
Right. Okay. Cool. So if I
Well,
do file as a foreign entity, that'll be okay.
that's what I very strongly assume. Because if
Cool.
you are registered in that state, even as a foreign entity filing, I think they'd have to accept your account.
Cool.
Sometimes the banks, even big banks I've talked to, You start talking about interstate, they get a little bit funny with you. Of course, you could always just create an entity in one of the states that they're in, but just remember, even though you're allowed to do that, if you want the bank to be comfortable with that process, make sure you have a legitimate reason as to why you expanded there. Like maybe you're buying real estate or you have family out there or whatever. So before I jump to the next question, let me jump to Chris. Chris says, I have an update with an app on First Horizon. So do you want to chat about that?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah. So yeah, it took them like 2 weeks. So I thought it was going to be like good news because she was calling me, asking me questions. But in the end, it was just what she had originally said. She was like, yeah, for 25, you're going to need to have in like double that, 50,000 in the account in order to get 25,000 credit. I was like,
that was the New York branch?
That was the New York branch. Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they go through the Tennessee branch because they're based out of Tennessee, but they have that branch in New York. That branch in New York they deal with a lot of money. They don't even have, it's not really even a branch that you can, like I had to deposit, go back to give them like a check, like I told you, for the $100. Because they look like they deal with like wealth management kind of thing more than any. But they do have that branch, and I was able to apply. So that kind of did it because obviously I'm getting funding to be able to use it. So if I had 50,000,
Does that include business credit cards?
Yeah, that's what I applied for.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, she said. I don't know if that was just. It's like, yeah, that was a lady I spoke to before, and then I got a guy that was nicer, but he looks like he had just got hired. And then she called me right back and she was like, oh, remember I told you that? It's like almost like she was not discouraging me, but kind of discouraging me. But when you said go for it, I was like, hey, what do I lose? Let me maybe some time and stuff like that. But now with that, I'm stuck and stuff like that.
I would still wonder if First Horizon in other states has that strict requirement because, for example, I'm in New Jersey, right? And KeyBank does 50,000. They pull Equifax, business line of credit, business credit card. But everybody in Florida can't get that product if they go through a Florida KeyBank branch. So what I'm saying is the people I've heard that have done well with First Horizon are not in New York. They are in other states. So I wonder if you had a branch from another state and you had dialogue with them, if they would say, oh yeah, we run it completely differently. Because that is how it is with KeyBank compared to Florida and Jersey. That
would be like getting a foreign entity, right?
Yeah, if you had a great conversation with them and they told you that's not how we run things down here, you have family there or a natural reason as to why you would expand there, you're buying real estate, then you could do that, yes.
Yeah, I thought that one that you were just talking about now with Travis and Mike.
Credit union?
Yeah, I thought that would have been.
You might be okay because Mike is further than you are. So when you're in New York, New Jersey, we have much easier time getting into Maryland than Massachusetts. So you could still call them and see if they'll talk with you.
Yeah, but I still need to do that first to get the AU on there.
Yeah, you'd still need to have that part prepped. But you could open the account and just not apply.
I could start doing that kind of stuff.
And now that you have an account, if it were me, I would call First Horizon Bank and
Tennessee.
Yeah, it might be worth a phone call and you just kind of put on a hat and kind of do like a test call to see if they'll talk to you differently if you speak with a local branch.
I think pretty much like if it's another state, it could get approved for a credit card. It's just that branch in New York. And she was like, I remember she called me and I have that Freedom Voice, is it? That they have one of those numbers for that costs only like $10 a month. And I couldn't tell it was coming from that number. When they call, it looks like it's just coming. So I didn't know it was her. And then I was like, hello. And then she was like, she wanted to hear me say that it was the business, like the name. And then the whole address thing too, that I had the registered address, registered agent in Albany. She was kind of like, that pushed it back to them and then it cleared it up. All that stuff I think like looks weird to them and it's a new company. She said that too. She's like, you're fairly new company. I'm almost 2 years in. And
it seems like her eyes are on you and it's not helping you.
Yeah, I think they were like, well, yeah, we don't have to do this. We're not going to do this. Like, well, we're going to give them 25,000 for.
Yeah.
Because it would have helped me to get started with the insurance since I got my insurance license to start buying leads and stuff like that. So I'm up in the air right now, basically.
That's really the only advice I have is credit partner, AU, try different banks. Y'all want to talk about credit partners or business credit building? Mike says building, four people say building. So this is a popular topic, which is how many trade lines do I need before I apply for funding? The answer is you can have 0. And today's YouTube video I released talks about that in detail and how I got 75K with no trade lines. But that is completely the exception to the rule. right? It's not the advice that I would give somebody. It's like saying, can I ride my bike without a helmet? It's like, you can. I don't think you should. Ideally, when you are trying to apply for funding, you should have at least one trade line. In a perfect world, you want it to report to all three bureaus, the main three bureaus, the ones that most people are checking. So Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax Business, and Experian Business. Your long-term target should be to get 3 or more trade lines on all three bureaus, but it's the more the merrier. We're spoiled because you could easily just go get the Nav Prime account and get the Nav Prime card, and pretty quickly you would have your 3 trade lines reporting. We still do the Net 30 vendor process. I first get Nav Prime card, and eCredible, and that'll give us 3 right away. However, as you know, you should overshoot it. In order to get 3 trade lines to report, which is your long-term goal, you want to aim to get way more than that. You should throw in also a mix of Net 30 accounts. Quill, Uline, Granger. I have all of those still, and I'd still recommend getting them. After you do that, and that's actually the easy part, and that's inside of its module 3, is the copy of the Net 30 vendors. And if you don't know like what this means, you can always just watch module 3 and you can understand a little more detail of what we're talking about with business credit building. We also have a Net 30 tracker, which I created, and it can help you track what vendor you're purchasing from, which bureau they're reporting to, if you got approved for it, how much you spent. Typically, if you're buying from Quill, for example, or these Net 30 vendors, you need to have a minimum that you're spending with them. The number is always changing between $50, $75. So I usually just tell people to spend $75 or more. You can spend a little extra energy, just call them and see what the minimum is for them to report, but usually it's about 75. Let's go a step further though. When you get really into it, like I am, you can ask banks. Like I knew Fulton would pull TransUnion on personal and business. When you get like really into it, you can really track which personal and business bureau each bank is pulling. So like, for example, I know Capital and Tap pulls Experian Personal, Experian Business. And the Experian Business, Experian Personal is your number one score to focus on if you're trying to get real serious funding like business lines of credit, business credit cards, because the majority of banks look at that. And one of the things that they look at is the SBSS score. So I'll just throw it down here, SBSS, and it's the Small Business Scoring Service. You need to have a 165 or higher. That's the minimum. When you start to get to the sweet spot, it'd be like 175 to 200, and then the show off is 200 or higher. So if like you got a 225 SBSS score, that's like having an 800 FICO score, right? If you have a 175 to 200 SBSS score, that's like having a 730, 750. The guy with the 165, you're closer to like the 680 range. You're at the minimum, but it's not going to be as easy. When you're applying for funding, it's not just how many trade lines do I need, which could be at least a minimum of 1 with a long-term goal of 3, but it's also what is your SBSS score, which primarily is a blended score, obviously on Experian Business, Experian Personal, but it's primarily driven by credit utilization. Now we go into credit utilization, more weight on personal than business. So that's good news if you're maxing out all your business credit cards, although half of them, if you're getting backyard banks, half of them are not reporting anywhere anyways, which is good for us. But let's just say you got that Chase card and you maxed out that, and you look at your Nav account and your Experian score is not that great. It's okay if your Experian business credit score is not that great, but you better have a great personal credit utilization. The sweet spot, which is really my target for any coaching student, would be to get them above the 200 SBSS score, because almost everything we apply for is going to get approved. And to get there, we have a credit utilization chart, which is inside the training. I could try to find it a little bit later, but you can have a myfico.com account and just look at where credit utilization is on all 3 personal credit bureaus. Your initial goal for personal credit utilization is under 25% usage, and that's cumulative, that's total. So you add up all your cards, the balances, and then all the cards, the limits, you divide the two. So if you're 2,500 balance over 10,000 limit, you're at 25% utilization. So that's good. You want to be 25% or less. The second sweet spot is a 1% to 2% credit utilization for almost every student I've ever worked with. So you would think 0% utilization with, 100 grand available credit is great, but every case I've ever seen, including my own, if I put a little $100 balance on my utilization and I have a small debt load of 1% to 2% utilization, my score is way over 800, like 830. If I have zero debt completely on my personal credit utilization, my score is 780. It'll sit like that for months. And then I'll swipe my Chase card, and then it'll report, and then my score will jump back up, and then I'll just always keep like under $500 balance on my personal card. For SBSS score, get as many business credit trade lines as you can get, reporting to Experian, and you can use the Net 30 vendor list for that. You get the NAV Prime card, the NAV Prime account, get the eCredible account, as many gas cards, as many of these as you can get and use. And then secondly, lower your personal credit utilization as close to 25% as you possibly can. If you can get it to 1% to 2%, go for it. You would want to talk to your own financial advisor about this. But often, what I've done a few times in my life is if I do the Burr method, that means I buy a property with no money out of pocket, I fix it up, I renovate it, now I'm going to refi out of the deal to pay off all my debt, the hard money lender, the private lender, the business credit, and all that. 8 out of 10 times, I have enough equity in the deal where I could put some in my pocket. So I'll put a credit card on the HUD or the CD, the closing statement, and I'll just pay that card off. And you can do that as a cash out refi, but usually I'll leave a little bit on the card. The cool thing about that is that it's basically income without it being income, because it is still debt. It's a loan, so it's not treated as income. However, you are living off of it. You're paying your bills, you're going out to eat, take care of Costco food, groceries, whatever. I have friends of mine that to this day, and I don't do it that often. I like to keep a lot of equity on my properties with the goal of 10, 15 years being able to be in a much better situation and kind of semi-retire. Here's a real example. I'll give you an example of a house I own. So $1 million is the value, and the loan is $700,000. That's a 70% LTV. So I have a 30% equity position on the property. So I have $300,000 in equity. I could use 50 grand of that to pay off my debt through a cash out refi. So we don't really talk about that often. We usually talk about like paying off debt through other ways or transferring the debt to your business. But you could do a refi on a property and include personal debt and have it paid off. Business credit utilization does matter, but most business credit cards don't report anywhere. So the few cards that do report, you would probably want to ask me, should I watch my utilization on those cards? I don't. Because if your personal credit utilization is low enough, it doesn't really matter if you max out all your business credit cards. You'll still be able to get plenty of business credit from future banks that are no doc because they're not asking what your debt load is, which is a double-edged sword. So don't take on more than you can handle. Strategic tip for controlling utilization, that you can look at the report dates of your cards. So for example, my Chase statement closes on the 10th. This is my personal credit card with Chase. And then I know right around the 13th to the 16th, they'll report the balance. You should definitely track on your spreadsheet, you're like a debt tracker, what is the statement close date, and then usually what is the reporting date. Closing date will be on your statement. The reporting date is usually about 3 days later. You'll know what it is if you're tracking your credit using MyFICO because you'll see the day that it hits. Another example would be PenFed. I have a personal line of credit and a personal credit card with PenFed. And a few times I've used the line of credit for short term, but I know I got to get paid back by the last weekend of the month because they take your balance. So I can use that money for a personal line of credit for 3 weeks out of the month. The balance doesn't show anywhere. I can max it out as long as I pay it off by the end of the month. So the trick is to learn, and you could just, especially with credit unions, you can just ask them straight up, like, when do you guys report? And they'll just tell you. That's the fun of using a credit union versus like a larger bank, is they are there for the people. And it doesn't just stop with PenFed. I mean, there's Navy Federal Credit Unions, great credit union that you could use for personal credit. There's a whole bunch of them that you could use. So the fun doesn't have to stop just to the business level. Are there questions on that than what I just shared there?
Joe, can I just share what I've seen with reporting dates versus statement dates?
Yes.
So with most of them tend to be pretty much the same, but with Elan, it's actually the reporting date is 3 or 4 days before the statement date.
Yeah.
Seems odd. And that's for me. Maybe it's different for other people.
With Elan, right? That's tricky. Those are things just to watch. And the only way you can figure it out is just track it every month. It should not take more than 2 months, maybe 10 minutes each month. So 20 minutes task over a 2-month period just to verify all that. Once you have it under control, though, it's great to know all these things. By the way, Chase is one of the banks that you can have lots of cards with. For example, like Sapphire is one of the more respected travel Chase cards. This is a business card. So I have this business card which does not report to personal.
Well, hopefully not anymore.
Yeah, you're right. It was like 1 or 2 months that happened. This is the card where the points are so easy to redeem and to use. And I follow the points guy. Learned a lot about how to use points and how to maximize points. And it's a very crazy game once you get into it. If you're using credit to pay for advertising and you're making more than $1 earned per dollar spent, you're printing money there. And then you're getting points for all of that. And you're getting up to 4x points on it. Amex is great and Chase. And you can learn a lot about that from the points guy. My best advice to somebody would be like, you master your personal credit, you master your business credit, buy real estate with no money out of pocket. And now you're just every month you're getting paid cash on a $0 investment. So you have an infinite ROI on your money, and then learn advertising and just make a positive ROI on your ads. Corey's not here today, but him and I have a call next week. We're doing a marketing audit. If you can figure that process out, you're now creating like an infinite points system accumulation where you don't have to travel 500 times a year and have a job that keeps you away from your family to reach status or have all these points. TD Bank business credit cards still haven't reported to my Experian personal yet. It's been like 5 months. All right. See, that's a good update. That's really good to know. So that's different than the original TD Bank business credit card. How many do you have, Travis? You have 4? 1 per business? Is it this new card, TD Business Solutions credit card? All right, thank you. So your question to us was how many can you get? You're the guy with the most so far. Like I said, I went with PNC, I went all the way to like 5 or 6, and then they specifically said no more. You're going to apply to 2 more today? Very nice. Other TD Business credit card was reporting its balance to your personal credit, yes. That's why I didn't like it. And the other one was Capital One. Their UCCs for business line of credit, yes. So just do the pros and cons if you want to get it. They gave me 100K, so I took it, but they're not giving that much anymore. So if you're only getting 25 to 50K, it might not be worth the UCC. It's kind of up to you. If you have more than one business, you might be more open-minded to it though. What lenders hate UCCs? So UCCs are liens against your business that are public under the Uniform Commercial Code, and PNC would be an example. They will tell you when you try to get a business line of credit from a bank, if you have any UCCs, we don't want to have anything to do with that, which is why I'm happy I have more than one operational business, because I have another LLC that doesn't have a UCC on it. Banks like M&T, TD Bank, PNC, Chase, Amex, a lot of these will allow you to have business credit. Like Travis just said, he's got 4 businesses with TD and he's got 4 different business credit cards. So a lot of them will allow you more than one. Usually the cap is at 2, but every now and then you find a bank that'll go beyond that, or you can have more than 2 businesses with them. Here's another thing. If the next bank is UCC sensitive and you don't have another operational business, you could always ask them if they would do a lower amount. So if they won't do a 50K line of credit, will they do 25K? I've been able to do that with some banks. Yeah, M&T is not top of the list. With M&T, they were in a extremely I hope this doesn't happen with Chase, because they are a powerhouse. But look at how Chase is just throwing money at people. They're like, you want one business credit card? Here you go. You want another one? Here you go. So when you see that after a couple of years, yeah, their lending appetite might get worse in a couple of years from now, because now they have to cut back a little bit. But they know what they're doing. You ever look at how much money they make? Sometimes they're gonna be lackadaisical, and sometimes they're gonna cut back.
Sure. What was the other? You said M&T, and what other bankers, low with lending right now?
Well, TD Bank has cut back with the amount that they're lending. Citizens is a good one if you have them in your area. First Citizens is good. Wells Fargo is good. Michelle just mentioned them. M&T might come back. Do you know that Chase was really conservative like 2 years ago? And then all of a sudden they went nuts. Here's another one that's conservative right now, Bank of America. And here's another thing is I see people, they'll go like, oh, I just did some applications and I'm disappointed. Travis says SEC was good. I'd love to know what do you have with them? Throw that, let me know. But like some people get denied or they get a low approval and then they'll think it's them. And I'm like, it's not always you. Sometimes it's the bank. Sometimes Elon Financial is in a restrictive lending mood for 3 months and you just hit them at the wrong time. So you could do everything perfect and the lending mood of the bank could be bad and then you get a low approval. There's actually 2 levels to that question, right? You could say what NAICS code are on your formation documents or on your public business profile online, and then you also have on your tax return. I know that people are very much obsessed with SIC codes and NAICS codes, and I write articles on it and I do YouTube videos on it, and it does very well, but it's really not that. I'll give you an example. Chris mentioned they called him and he said hello instead of like good afternoon. His address was being adjusted. That stuff is way more important than your NAICS code. So I know there's YouTube videos out there right now that are like, this NAICS code is being red flagged. And I see it all over the Get Business Credit group on Facebook. And what sucks is like if one TikToker says it, everybody just buys into it. Like that's the truth. And if you talk with bankers, like you need to be friendly with bankers where you're going out with them, more than one. And you can ask them that question. They're going to roll their eyes and be like, that's not that big of a deal. I talk about using asset management, property management is good. A lot of these codes are good, but it's whatever your CPA thinks he needs to put on your tax return. I mean, that's the real answer. I'm going to repeat it, which is like, have they ever gotten into it with you? And have you had to go into detail? What is asset management? What is property management? What's your NAICS code? All those questions are answered in the course as far as what do I use? It's all there. And I know we use a lot of times 8741 for the SIC code. And then you have a bunch of people saying that that's not a good SIC code, but that's not true. If you are setting up everything properly, then it's like this much weight is on your industry code, with the exception of real estate flipping and cannabis. If I take that off the table, then it's like this much. What really matters, the structure of your business. So there's a whole training here I don't think you watched. I mean that in a loving way, because it covers that exactly in detail. What do I say to banks? How do I talk to them? I'm a real estate investor. How do I talk about what my industry is? And the answer is in this lesson called How to Get Banks to Work with You. And I put the link in the Zoom chat. But I tell them everything. I just tell them straight up. And if they don't love me for it, we move on. However, I tell them that I've set up my company in such a way that we have real estate properties that I own and I manage those assets. So if you're using asset management, it's quite an easy industry, NAICS code, SIC code to use that still matches in alignment with real estate. But you have to be careful because you need to make sure you're being compliant. So for me, rather than like play all these games or try to like hide or get away with stuff, I'll just build rapport. If I'm in New Jersey, I found the top 200 banks in New Jersey that are on the SBA lending list. And then I download that list. And then we call that list and we find out 10% of them. So 20 of these banks are very small business friendly. They will work with startups. They lend their own money. They offer their own business credit cards, which usually means they offer their own business lines of credit. They're great for cash out refis for real estate investors, which is great for the Burr method. Those are the banks I want to work with. So now I only have 20 banks that I need to become friends with. From there, I visit all of them and I become friends with the many people that'll become friends with me, which led me to close to $1 million in funding. Watch that lesson, how to get the banks off the script, learn how to meet with them for coffee, meet with them at their bank. And then you could actually ask them right in person at your office or at a coffee shop or wherever at a networking event. Hey, I got a question for you, man. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's a lot of talk about the NAICS code and certain industries creating a red flag. Is that true? And what are things that really create red flags for you? Then the banker is going to tell you, here's some things that create red flags for us. And by the way, guys, it's not going to be your SIC code. It's not going to be your NAICS code. So A, go with whatever your accountant recommends, okay? From there, you still do have wiggle room when you have conversations with banks, but you want to develop enough rapport with the bank where you can just have an open dialogue with them. This is the list, by the way, and I just took it slow. You can quickly get business credit cards, and that's fine. You can get those 20 business credit cards from all those banks, right? But of those 20 banks, only 5 of them are offering no doc unsecured business lines of credit. So the business line of credit is the hardest product to get. The business credit card is a lot easier to get. So I get both. I get all the business credit cards I can get, stacks of them, but then I also get the business lines of credit. And the business lines of credit, though, are based on relationships with the vice president of business lending. And they're not as concerned with my industry. They're more concerned with me being able to have an open dialogue with them, but also make sure your stuff matches. Make sure you're not using virtual addresses. Those are getting flagged, by the way. That's not hype. Although right now all the gurus on YouTube are saying, go get a virtual address, which is ironic. So you're always getting fed bad advice. And the only way you can tell who's telling the truth, me or the other person, is you have to make friends with the banker. And then you can ask the banker, hey, Chris, what's the real deal, man? bad or is it good? He's going to tell you, yeah, man, we flagged those commercial mail receiving agencies. Don't use whatever as your main address. And then now you know the truth because you went to the source. If you have a virtual address, I just tell people just use it as your mailing address. You can still keep it, but the main business address would need to be a not virtual address. So now we go New Jersey. These are all the banks that I went and visited. So Provident Bank, TD Bank, Fulton Bank, Chase, Unity. I thought I saw Valley here somewhere. Now it's Truist, Citizens. There's actually some new ones that have been added because all I got to do is call them and start building rapport with them. Get the business credit card, get the business checking account, get a couple deposits in play, then ask for the business line of credit. Bye for now. We'll pick this up on the next call.